I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here at the Hub Culture Pavilion at the GetGlobal conference in Los Angeles. Really pleased to be joined by Susan Ross. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you for the invitation.
Now, you're a partner at MSK, the practice chair. You cover cybersecurity, international trade, data privacy. We can't talk about all of those things.
Right.
But I would love to hear, first of all, your thoughts on how easy is it for a company? How easy is it for a company to get in trouble once they go to an international market?
Well, the answer is very. And what it really comes down to is understanding that just like anything else you're going to do in the business environment, you really have to do your homework. And the start of that truly is to figure out who your experts are going to be and get them around you before you're in trouble. Do it proactively, and then the number of problems and the size of those problems, having done your homework and having the right team around you, really becomes much more manageable.
Give me some horror stories. Tell me about dinosaur eggs.
Yeah, we were talking about that. So we had a client, and much of this is public record, so I can speak about it a bit more broadly, who was an Australian national who had purchased some dinosaur fossils on the open market in Hong Kong, brought them back to Australia to touch them up, and then imported them into the US. This occurred a number of years ago when we, as the US government, were giving a lot of difficulty to the Chinese about the currency not being stable, about intellectual property rights and not protecting it, and so on. So the Chinese came to the American government and said, okay, fine, we'll talk to you about these, but we have another issue, and that is we want to protect our cultural property. So he brought this stuff in based upon a very arcane issue of exactly how to mark the country of origin. The government stepped in, argued that this was stolen cultural property, so they were indicting an Australian national under US law for a violation of Chinese law.
Gosh.
And we got it settled on very good terms, but it is an example of trying to understand enough that you got your product in without necessarily understanding what you needed to do to avoid getting in that kind of trouble.
And you had another example about some boards, radio boards in Brazil. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the other thing we were talking about was a client of ours who had, so it's this crawling radio or whatever they call it. In the bars, it's the headline service that's the LED displays. And they had gotten all of the permits they thought they needed. They were ready to launch, and 2 days before they launched, the Brazilian government decided that it was political speech, and so they shut it down. And so you have that sort of example of things happening out of left field, and just understanding sort of the political environment that you're in, versus the other example we had talked about off camera, which was you design a product to go to the market in, let's say, Japan. Just because we're in LA, it's easy to talk about Asia. And it's the kind of a refrigerator that would fit easily in an American home, but it's too large for a Japanese home.
Right.
And so it's not just design the product, it's also taken into consideration the local situation. So not just the currency, and by that I mean the electricity, but also, you know, how large is the home, and we've had other examples where the refrigerator was finally small enough, but it had to be outside because there were so many people living in the home, but there was no room inside.
Right.
You know, so there are all kinds of local cultural issues. Disney has spoken, for example, very openly about when they designed the park in Japan, in Tokyo, I think it is. They had a whole different reaction of the crowd. So in the US and in Paris, you had a lot of the family would come in, the family would eat, the family would leave. In Japan, their experience has been that the family sits there all day. So it's a different kind of demand that the consumer has. And understanding and trying to plan for that in advance and being flexible enough to adapt once you realize that your decision might not have been precise are the kinds of things that make for success. And we've talked about some relatively large companies, but even small companies can put the right team around them and really do the research that needs to be done, and then come up with practical solutions.
Susan, thank you so much for stopping by the Hub Culture Pavilion.
Quite welcome. Thank you
here
again.
in Los Angeles, and I'm Edie Lush.